Hey team, Jesse Dale at Macro Missionary, and I'm pretty excited about this topic on fasting. And we've covered intermittent fasting in the past, and today we're going to cover actual fasting. And I was astounded at some of the literature on this. And it kind of correlated really well because Erica is in her PhD program, and she is now in a class on fasting. So kind of rock and roll. So the reason that this kind of came into fruition is I was born and raised Catholic, and on Lent we typically give something up, and on Fridays like we don't eat meat. So I said, hey, you know, I've never done it before. I've always done intermittent fasting, but on Fridays, could I do a 24-hour fast? And immediately my brain put up its defense mechanism. Thank you, brain. It's there to protect me and keep me safe. And it was like, oh man, you're going to be tired. You're going to get weak. You're going to lose muscle. And that was my biggest thing is I don't want to lose muscle. At times I identify as a bodybuilder, so that's the last thing that I'd want to do. So before we kind of dive in deeper into this topic, there's one very important thing to consider, that your environment is where your influencers live, okay? And that is going to mold your belief. So if you're in an environment that thinks that you're going to be weak, tired, and have muscle loss from fasting, then you're going to feel weak, get tired, and have muscle loss from fasting. If you are in an environment that says, no, you're going to have very high energy, you're going to set PRs, and you're going to get more muscular as a result of fasting, then that's what's going to occur. And again, what dictates that is going to be your environment. So the people where your influencers live, okay, and the environment that you're in. So if you're in a neutral environment, or maybe you're in an environment where it's 50-50, then this might be a beneficial talk for you. Because I like to live in evidence-based environments. Okay, I like to know about the data and the studies and all the nerdy stuff. So an evidence-based environment is typically where my beliefs go. Now, what's pretty amazing is that the beliefs can override the evidence, and that's been proven time and time again with study after study. So very, very interesting. All right, so let's dive in. So we're talking about fasting, not starving. Okay, so there is a difference between the two. Many of us instinctually fast, okay, particularly intermittent fast. Intermittent fasting would be going 16 hours without eating and then having an 8-hour window. Many of us just instinctually do that. I know a lot of nurses that do that because they're working 12s and so forth. So it's kind of naturally encoded in us to do instinctually anyway. That doesn't necessarily make it optimal or not optimal. It's just it seems to be part of what comes naturally to a lot of people. If you look in the encyclopedia, they will say that the average person can fast for up to 45 days. That's with water. That's way beyond my belief system. But actually, in the Erica's PhD manual that she's reading on this class, not PhD manual, but on this particular class on fasting, they actually have referenced people who have fasted 70 to 90 days. Holy cow. So yeah, it's definitely happening and whatnot. So I want to clarify before I move into a few other evidence-based points that I'm really not endorsing it. My belief system is kind of right there in the middle. I'm just doing this as part of like my Lenten journey and walk with Christ. That's why I'm fasting. I'm not necessarily advocating it for clients, not advocating it for you, but I am sharing some of the evidence. So back to my number one concern. My number one concern is Friday today happens to fall on a workout day, and it happens to fall on one of my favorite workout days, back and shoulders. So my big concern was, all right, what about muscle loss, and what about strength loss, and just what about energy in general, okay? Those are my three biggest concerns that I want to dive into the research. And what I found, I'm actually gonna read you the passage, but this made a lot of sense to me, and this helped really mold and change my belief. So you have so many 100 million fat cells, okay? So here's your fat cells. All right, you have so many 100 million. Unless you did liposuction, you don't ever lose the fat cell. The cell is there to stay, but what you do is you lose or liberate or oxidize the triglyceride within the cell, and then the cell shrinks. Okay, so our big fat cells become small fat cells. But we don't ever, when we diet or do caloric restriction, we don't ever go from 200 million fat cells down to 100. Okay, we have 200 million, and they can get this big in size, trust me, I know, or they can get very small in size, depending on the level of triglyceride. Well, it was very interesting that in my research that I found is that muscle cells are very similar, okay? So you have so many muscle cells, and they do store fat, by the way, so they will shrink if you lose fat, but they also store quite a bit of water. So you have sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, which is the water inside the muscle cell, and you have sarcomeric hypertrophy, which is the actual largening of the muscle cell itself. But you have so many muscle cells in what made sense, because fat's the same ways, you don't lose the muscle cell except under extraordinarily extreme conditions, same way that you lose actual fat cells. They literally have to suck it out of you. So your muscle cells are what they are, but they will get larger and smaller depending on how much fat they're carrying, and more so depending on how much water they're carrying. Matter of fact, some research suggests that up to 80%, the average that I've read is 70, 75, but up to 80% of your muscles are water. So when you fast, and even though you're taking in a lot of water, your muscle cells are going to atrophy, but you're not going to lose the cell itself. So when you resume proper carbohydrate intake, proper eating, or normal eating, I should say, not proper, but normal eating, then that muscle will resume its original size. But it may look like, whoa, man, I'm flat, I'm depleted because of this fast, and that can create a psychological cascade of some false beliefs. Well, I must be losing muscle. I guess in actuality, you are losing muscle size, which is water, and maybe even some triglyceride within the muscle cell, but you're not losing the cell itself. Same thing with fat. Okay, so that was interesting to find. So the next was strength. Okay, I was curious, well, what about strength? Because I tend to correlate, especially during a fast, if you're losing strength, well, then maybe I am losing some of that sarcomeric hypertrophy, that actual tissue. Okay, so I'll just kind of read an excerpt here. And this is in a chapter, actually, it's titled Gain and Loss of Strength While Fasting. How cool is that, you know? Who would have said that Erica's PhD would really, really pay off? Just joking, honey. All right, so chapter 16. Most men can understand eating to get strong, says Dr. Tilden, but it takes a long time to educate them to stop eating to get strong. As paradoxical as it may seem to those who have no experience with fasting, there is frequent and perhaps always a gain in strength while fasting. Now, I'm going to tell you that this particular chapter, you can tell this guy's bias. He is very pro-fasting. He's like faster sin. But very interesting, and he cites many examples in the chapter of people who have gained strength. And the fasting they're talking about is weeks. Like, dude, I'm talking about doing it for a day. You know what I'm saying? The fasting they're talking about is weeks, which my belief system just isn't there. But it is ironic to hear that. And then the other excerpt that I wanted to read to you is fasting and muscle loss. Okay, so we've already kind of talked about that. I've already kind of interpreted this to you, but I wanted to read it directly. The loss of weight during a fast does not represent a loss of vital tissue, but a surplus nutriment, waste, fat, etc. It is just so many pounds of disease that one loses, and disease is in quotes. The muscles, for example, decrease in size, but this is due to a decrease in the amount of fat and water within their cells. There is no actual lessening of the number of muscle cells during the ordinary fast. So that's, that really helped with my belief system as far as doing my one-day fast. Now, let's talk about some benefits that I'm expecting to get out of this one-day fast. And then you can maybe make a decision and be like, maybe I should try it. I don't know if I'm completely bought in. I don't know if this is something that I'm going to really continue after the Lenten season. But some benefits that I know that I'm going to see from this one-day fast every Friday in Lent is saving time. I mean, I'm not going to have to prepare meals. And that might sound funny, but that's like a real deal. I mean, the time eating and the time preparing meals. I already talked about that strength isn't going to be an issue. Energy shouldn't be an issue. I didn't read anything from the book, but they cover a lot on actually heightened energy during times of fasting. And muscle loss won't be an issue. So spiritual fulfillment, definitely there should be some spiritual fulfillment. So that's a benefit. Banking calories. It's no secret. You guys know Eric and I love food. We like large amounts of food. So obviously going 24 hours without food, I'm going to have excess calories to decide what to do with tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow after 7 a.m. Controlling appetite. This is why I started intermittent fasting to begin with. And it seems like the majority of people that do at least intermittent fasting do feel a sense of lowered hunger. Now, that's not the case with all the time, because remember, that's all going to depend on whatever environment you're living in. So if you're living in a neutral environment, I would bet that you're going to get a lower level of hunger signaling, okay? So controlling appetite's a big one. And then just less calories all around. So obviously there would be a fat loss benefit for me if I don't take all the calories from my fast day and eat them tomorrow, which I actually have no intention of doing that. So hopefully this was a little bit enlightening for you. If you'd like to learn more about it, intermittent fasting or overall fasting for 1, 2, 3 days or whatnot is right for you, then send us a message. If you're just not sure and you're like, I don't even know where to start, send us a message. We'll absolutely help you out. That's what we are in existence to do. And I hope you got some good points from this. You have an awesome day.